Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Better Why Phase 7. People may hate you for being different and not living by society's standards, but deep down, they wish they had the courage to do the same. At the helm of this discussion, I would say that for the purpose of this dialogue, we will be using the word queer to refer to anyone who does not conform to the social construct of heteronormity, gender identity, or sexual orientation. The Rotaract Club of Colombo East is a premier Rotaract club in Sri Lanka with a long tradition of inclusivity, irrespective of gender identity and sexual orientation, among others. Our club is currently on the path to articulating the tradition into the legal framework of our organization. We believe at our core that it is important not just to tolerate and permit, but rather to take proactive steps towards acceptance, inclusivity, and celebration of diversity. This program is only one of the many that we are holding this month to celebrate Pride. We hold it in very high esteem to be the first Rotaract Club in Sri Lanka to elect an openly queer president. We are proud to present ourselves as an organization that not just tolerates queer people in our ranks, but celebrates them and the diversity they bring to our club. To begin today, we have a very special person here with us today who has advocated for trans rights in Peru, a country with similar socio-cultural background as Sri Lanka in terms of queer acceptance. She is the winner of the Zulemis Prize for advocating for the right to work for trans people in Peru. She is a sociologist who has been serving in YMCA Peru through the design, implementation, assessment, and systemization of programs, projects, and services related to people in need and vulnerability in 3 cities of our country. After achieving her master's degree in social science, she concentrated her efforts in challenging fields such as comprehensive health, child labor, digital inclusion, employability, and entrepreneurship, especially linked to youth, women, and transgender persons. She has been engaged with the YMCA since she was 12 years old. All her life, she has to do with YMCA, including her family. The first 15 years as a volunteer, and then as a member of the practitioner staff. A passionate university professor, she teaches graduate courses related to social management, sociology of labor, and community relationships. And we as a club are very fortunate to have her here with us today to talk about an amazing program she runs in Peru. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rocio Solis. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Amavi. It's a pleasure to be here and to share with you our experience in Peru, doing our best for transgender people. Let me share my screen, please, in order to explain how it goes. So we have a special video after my presentation we can share with you. This is Transforming Peru with Kaori. Kaori is a trans woman who belongs to our YMCA, and she is the leader of Intertwining Paths, our project we have been running for the last 3 years to not only welcome transgender people, but also do our best for them. That means to bring together transgender persons with opportunities to address especially 2 components of their lives: employability and entrepreneurship. This is a best practice, and I call this as a best practice because not every YMCA is able to run such a program, because in Latin America, we are in a very, very conservative context. It is not so easy to be disruptive and to say, come on, we have to respond to the needs of our community. In our community, there are transgender people. So what to do with them? This was the case in our downtown Lima. We have a community center there, and all around there are transgender people who are living, working, doing their best to try to live, to survive, actually. So we had a call. We had a call in order to bring them opportunities to overcome poverty, to overcome this challenging situation of disparities. So this program called Entrelazando Caminos in Spanish, Intertwining Paths, has provided a safe space for transgender people so that, aware of their rights, establish a roadmap that allows them to achieve well-being and job opportunities. I have to say that we don't have the permission to change their lives. They choose by on their own decision to change. But this change is really deeply linked to the reality. If our society give the opportunity to overcome this situation, and Peru's society, Peru's state is not ready to respond to that needs. That's why we have to advocate a lot in order to create the atmosphere that these people could develop all their potential. We, of course, as a practitioners of social sciences, we have to explain our rationale and our context. It is not so easy because intersectionality is running here, and YMCA not we have all the tools in order to develop some experiences, valuable experiences for people in need. But some vulnerable people are quite difficult to scope. And that's why we have to be very careful when we identify which human rights are unprotected, who is the people that we will affect with our decisions, in our case, the transgender people. What are the causes? What are the effects? In this case, that the lack of legitimacy of transgender people cause this situation of rights denied. At YMCA, in our case, should assign resources to see which advocacy processes could lead, which allies we have in our district. Otherwise, we cannot do anything in a good way for transgender people. We have to say also that this good practice is deeply related to the Christian mandate, because YMCA is a Christian organization. So if Jesus were here, where he could be, with whom? Transgender people, for instance. Yes, this is the answer. Jesus would be here with transgender people and meet them. So it is, that's why we could say to our senior management, so General Secretary, please hear me. We have to respond to the needs to the people where we are. Transgender people are there. They are coming to us. They rent our football space, our volleyball space, sport place. And what is our response? What about our response? So that we established a long-term change. What impact should we expect with this decision? Would be able to make a difference? That was really a deep question for us. Could we make a difference really? Do we have the whole resources that we need? And most of them are our intentions strong and brave, because Peru, as a conservative context, they don't accept trans people. They don't accept LGBTI collective. And what are the guiding principles? A lot of guiding principles we have. Gender, participation, of course, indivisibility of human rights, sustainability, equity. In this case, Interwinning Paths has inclusion, diversity, do no harm, and also empowerment. Of course, intersectionality is also important, because so many things about health, education, politics, human rights, all are deeply, deeply related. So we have to be aware of this in order to plan a good intervention for these people, especially because these people work in the streets. It's quite challenging for them to access to the state services, education, health, work, housing, quite difficult to live. That's why they say, we just survive here. How can YMCA make a difference there? The problem to address was also challenging to establish, because reality is complex and has interconnected components. As you know, there will always be many problems to tackle, of course, but the target audience know which one is the main one. And given the resources available, everyone should prioritize which specific issues to address. YMCA prioritized, of course, these issues, and that's why our practice has three priorities: well-being, employability, and entrepreneurship. Our target audience from the beginning was LGBTI people as a collective, but this is huge, and we know that they have different demands and objectives. That's why we decided to work with transgender people, because these participants face multiple forms of violence and discriminations, the worst ever. And we identify NGOs, movements, local governments, influencers, and community leaders in order to increase the chances of success. You must understand also that in Peru does not have a gender identity law that would pave the way for the creation of public policies. And that's why it's more difficult to address such issues in our country. This is the way how change come about. we have related activities that nourish outputs and then the outcomes, and we can establish finally the impact. We have been working with these people for 3 years, and we are harvesting some good results from this investment we have made in these people. Of course, there are assumptions and risks all the way, because there are conditions that are not under our control. But we are pretty sure of this mechanism. This is the theory of change we have, that in this way we could impact in a positive way these people. Perhaps it is really difficult to understand, but this is the roadmap for our project. With this inclusion and diversity guiding principles, we identify that these activities, such as workshops, meetings, advocacy strategies, we could be able to run capacity building in order to affect these 3 topics of our project: well-being and awareness rights, productive skills, and then entrepreneurship management. That's the way as we could provoke some useful changes for these people, like the decision of coming back to school because they didn't finish the secondary school, and also to boost the mental health, intensifying networks, the job access, and also obtaining grants for these initiatives, economic initiatives, in order to start a business. It has not been easy. It was very difficult to get all this information, the thoughts and the resources on the table in order to explain to our transgender people, this is the way you can find a path for your life, but you have to choose. YMCA will not choose. You have to choose. It's your decision. You are free to decide which path you can walk. Of course, there are some assumptions that put at risk our project, like jobs offer. Not every employer in our country is ready to offer a job for a transgender person. Also, the access to grants and credit, that's why YMCA was so effective in this point. Public and private employers' guidelines of inclusion, this is coming little by little. Access to networks, and also awareness of citizenship, because Peru society must understand that transgender people are also part of the citizenship. And in this moment, it is quite difficult to understand for everyone here in Peru. So thank you for hearing me. I'm sure that the video will explain more than me and better than me the whole situation of this marvelous project we have. So please, Mari and the people here in Sri Lanka, please be free to share our video. Thank you.
Soy Kaori Tonamatanama, una mujer transgénero con 28 años de edad, integrante en el proyecto Entrelazando Camino Inca Perú, programa dirigido para el colectivo LGBTI. Soy de la ciudad de La Selva, Perú. Tengo viviendo 9 años acá en la capital de la República. Salí de mi casa por problemas familiares, por mi identidad de género. Conocí al Inca viniendo a jugar vóley con mis amigas mujeres trans. Tengo participando desde el 2018 en el proyecto Entrelazando Caminos. Soy una de las pioneras en el proyecto.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Yo soy Cintia, soy la coordinadora del proyecto. Pensando en la experiencia ofrecida por Inca, es muy interesante que nuestro primer objetivo cuando empezamos con esto tenía que ver con el hecho de que las chicas que llegaran al proyecto se sintieran seguras. Y es lo que en primer momento se logró. Y eso fue vital, no solamente para ellas y para reconocer a Inca como un lugar de referencia, sino para que ellas puedan desplegar con total libertad sus sueños, poder contar sus anhelos, poder hablar de aquello que proyectan. Esa seguridad fue muy importante para su crecimiento personal, pero también para su crecimiento como colectivo.
Es muy complicado la vida de las mujeres trans en el Perú, principalmente en 4 aspectos. En el estudio es complicado por el motivo de las discriminaciones de parte de los compañeros y profesores. Por eso que muchas compañeras mujeres trans no culminan sus estudios. En el trabajo es muy difícil porque no valoran nuestra capacidad, solo se fijan en nuestra identidad de género. Respecto a las viviendas, es muy difícil, pagamos más que los demás. Hay ocasiones que se vive entre 2 amigas para poder sobrevivir. En la salud es muy difícil la atención. No nos llaman como me siento yo, Kaori, nos llaman como está en nuestro DNI.
En el contexto del COVID, el protagonismo de Kaori y el despliegue de su liderazgo fue muy importante no solamente para las compañeras que son parte del proyecto Entrelazando Caminos, en el que Kaori participa y es líder, sino también para otras mujeres trans que son parte de las casonas en las que ella está y en las que ella se relaciona. Kaori fue un referente para ayudas para estas mujeres de parte de la municipalidad y de otras ONGs. En ese momento pudimos ver no solamente la capacidad de liderazgo, sino también su sentido de servicio. Estamos muy orgullosas de ese proceso, porque Kaori no solamente se fortaleció, sino que fue ayuda para otras.
A la comparación de mi vida anterior con la vida que tengo hoy, me siento tan orgullosa, tan responsable y más despierta. Me gustaría ser una líder y trabajar por los derechos para las mujeres trans en el Perú. Así como yo, he logrado un trabajo formal en la Municipalidad de Lima. Soy fiscalizadora y soy respetada con toda la gerencia, no por mi identidad de género, sino por la responsabilidad que tengo en mi trabajo. Me gustaría que mi historia sea escuchada por las demás mujeres trans, para que sepan que sí se puede cumplir con nuestras metas y terminar nuestros estudios. Así como yo, estoy por terminar mi secundaria.
En esa oportunidad de trabajo a la que Kaori pudo acceder, el papel de Inca fue muy importante, ya que fungió de referente para la municipalidad al poder dar fe de la capacitación y de todo el proceso que Kaori desde hace 3 años tuvo dentro del proyecto Entrelazando Caminos. Kaori ha demostrado su destreza, su capacidad, todas las habilidades que ha desarrollado y en el trabajo hoy tiene muy buenas referencias, lo cual para nosotros es muy importante y es valioso también para que otras mujeres trans puedan ver que el proceso es real, es posible y que hacer este camino de capacitación que Inca ofrece tiene frutos positivos. Para nosotros el desafío a largo plazo es que otras mujeres trans pudieran tener este proceso de capacitación. Creemos que el proceso ha probado que funciona, creemos que testimonios como el de Kaori, como el de Vanessa, como el de otras compañeras que han emprendido, por ejemplo, tienen sus frutos y pueden ser replicados con eficiencia. Estamos contentos, estamos agradecidos y en Kaori podemos ver que el trabajo hecho, cada uno de los pasos, ha valido la pena.
Mi sueño es que las personas sean más empáticas y las mujeres trans tengan derechos para que juntos transformemos el Perú.
Thank you so much, Rocio, for joining us here today. And I understand it's early in the morning in Peru, but still you joined us and gave us your time, shared your amazing initiative. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's great to share our experience here in this moment. And for all the people in the world also, we have already been in the summit, the Future of Work of the World Alliance, and it was a great opportunity to share also.
Yes, thank you so much. So now we will be moving on to the panel discussion portion of this evening. I am certain that this would be an amazing discussion. We have a lot to learn, so does our audience. I would like to start off by introducing our amazing panelists for this evening. Our first panelist, he is the Equality Director at iProBono and a General Counsel at Investment Bank TWC. He was the former head of legal at the Ministry of Finance National Agency for Public-Private Partnerships, a founding trustee of education initiative Think Equal, and an investment banking lawyer at Clifford Chance and KL Gates in London. Since moving back to Sri Lanka in December 2016, he has also advised the Sri Lankan government on financial, economic, and education policy reform, especially around the Port City project. He continues to be a strong advocate for legal reform to strengthen the rights of women, children, and the queer community. For his work, he was ranked #1 Future LGBT Business Leader by the international newspaper The Financial Times in their 2015 Outstanding list alongside Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and Lloyd's of London boss Inga Beale, the highest global ranking in business by a Sri Lankan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aritha Wickramasinghe.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining in. So moving on to our second panelist. First and foremost, he's a storyteller. He is sometimes an actor of both stage and film, and his most recent performance being in Deepa Mehta's globally acclaimed film, Funny Boy, based on Shyam Selvadure's book of the same name, in which he plays the title character. He is sometimes an author, and he has spent the better part of the decade working on his third novel. He is a full-time creative director of Wandavan Thompson in Sri Lanka, where he is the head of creative and digital communications. He is also a student currently studying for his master's in communication, but he is mostly a dreamer, and that is what he is proud of. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Brandon Damian Ingram.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Moving on to our third panelist for the evening. He is a Colombo-based playwright, actor, and director. His work has touched on various forms, including immersive performance, device theater, and live art. Receiving his formal education in the UK, but having resided most of his life in Sri Lanka, Arun's work is tied to a myriad of different influences. He is a member of Mind Adventures Theatre Company for 10 years, serving as the company's associate artistic director from 2013 to 2017. He is the writer and director of several acclaimed plays, including Only Soldiers and The One Who Loves You So, for which he has received a Gratian Prize for Literature. His work touches on the intersections of sexuality, queerness, and class in Sri Lanka. He is currently completing his master's in fine arts in dramatic writing at the Tisch School of Arts, New York University. Please welcome our third panelist for the evening, Arun Velandave Premathilaka. Hi, Arun.
Hello, thanks for having me. Thank you.
The pleasure is all ours. Moving on to our final guest for this evening. She really needs no introduction, but she is a human rights activist who is a passionate advocate. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our humble Bhumi Harendran. Hi, Bhumi.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me today.
The pleasure is all ours. With our panelists being introduced, let's open the floor for the discussion. I would like to remind everyone who's tuned in on Facebook that we will be fielding questions from the audience, permitting that time is not a restriction, but please make sure to leave a comment on the questions that you want to ask our panelists this evening. So moving on to the questions. My first question is, I'm going to open it up to the floor. What do young people need to know about gender equality and sexual orientation that they did not learn in school? So basically everything, including when and how you realized that you were queer. Aritha, do you want to start off?
Sure. Thank you for that very relevant question. The answer to that is that actually young people are not taught anything in schools about sexual orientation and gender identity, at least not when I went into school. And, you know, I engaged with a lot of young people and they have not had that kind of education. I think it is very irresponsible and ignorant of our educators not to be teaching young people about the reality and the facts of the human existence, which is that we exist with diverse sexual orientations and with diverse gender identities. I myself, I knew I was gay when I was 12 years old, and I came out when I was 15 years old. I was lucky enough to have parents who gave me plenty of books where I was able to self-educate myself on sexual orientation and gender identity. But not everyone will have that form of education or have parents who have that kind of discussion. And if you're in school and young people spend most of their time in school, schools should have that responsibility to teach children so that they're better prepared, they understand themselves, and they can better respond to when they discover their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Arun, do you want to follow up on that question?
I mean, to me, it's, I mean, what Arti said is true. I also just feel like most young people don't, they have a very different, a lot of young people, well, if they're lucky enough, do have a very different idea of the world and of gender identity and of even their approach to these sort of binaries that are handed down by biology or are taught by science. They have a very different idea, and certainly they have a very different idea of sexual identity. I think the idea of coming out is something that, with hope, also is sort of already sort of fading away in most parts of the world. I don't think people really see that as part of a journey anymore. They don't have to. But I mean, it's of paramount importance, I guess, for everyone to know. But I think it's in terms of my journey of it, I mean, I don't know. I came out fairly late in life. I was 25, I think, which goes to show that I mean, and I have, you know, unspeakable privilege. You know, I have incredibly liberal or progressive family, and all the privileges of race and class, and gender, and being cisgendered. But it was incredibly difficult, and so even for anyone who doesn't have all of those things, it is doubly or more so difficult. Yeah.
Bhumi, from personal experience, do you want to add into this conversation?
Yes, I think whether it's a gender identity or it's a sexual orientation, it's a part of your personality and it's part of your life. And we all have our personal lives. I don't think that we need to labelize it and, you know, mark it as, okay, I'm gay or I'm trans person, or treat me in a manner. We all deserve dignity, right? We all have our own dignity. We all have our different journeys, which is like different to persons to persons. What I always say is, what we don't understand here is like people are different, and it calls diversity, right? It's something bond with the nature. So it's like, if a person is gay, it doesn't mean that he's coming from another planet, or like sexuality can be implanted from another country to a country, right? It's part of the nature, right? And I really hate giving definitions on these things, but because like whenever we are talking about this, people think, okay, they're special people. That's why they need special definitions of this. But unfortunately, in some kind of discussions, that to make them realize this is something normal, this is something natural, we have to give some definitions. So where I always use very simple definition for to describe the difference of gender identity and sexual orientation. Uh, that's something related with bed, which I really don't want to touch, because when people think, I mean, the first thing coming to mind when we are talking about gender identities and sexual orientation is people think about sex and bed. So they think that gay people don't have other life other than having sex with all kind of guys, and they think that when we are talking about transgenders, okay, these are sex workers, they have people who are seeking sex and trying to take attention. Please, we have different lives and far more better lives and goals to achieve than people think. So the simple example that I always use, sexual orientation is something that with whom you are like to go to the bed. Gender identity is something that as who you like to go to the bed. I think that's the most simple example that I can bring it on. But like I always say is, okay, just because I use the bed word, it doesn't mean that our entire life is related to bed. Yes, people have different sexual lives, people have different sexual orientations. Sometimes people have, like so-called straight people also might have different, sexual fantasies, which is not defining. So I think my bed life and my personal relationships is too personal to me. So if we learn to respect, I think this is something that we need to teach from schools, start from schools, from families, to respect each other, no matter what is your gender, no matter what is your sexual orientation. But end of the day, we all are human beings. So if we start to teach our kids, our brothers and sisters, whoever lives around us, to respect each other, I think the discussions and we are having this kind of situations. I mean, I have started my activism life like from 2000, since 2010, but I still, what is the missing part, to respect the human dignity, the respect the diversity. That's what I think. There's a huge gap. We can change policies. I mean, after, like, it's not easy, but I mean, what I'm saying is it's not easy, but at least we can approach to legal and policy changes. But it's something difficult. What I'm finding is like to talk about these things with the general public, the platforms that we need to talk. I mean, we have seen so many young crowd joining to pride celebrations, lives, but sometimes I'm highly doubt why people sometimes showing their so much interest on working on it. But what I most of the times what I'm finding is like to develop their career, to get kind of a marks on their CVs, like to stay in the safe spaces by pretend to be open-minded character. But that not something should be, right? If you want to become a human, um, um, a respectable gentleman or a lady, you need to start working on your soul and your heart. That's what I believe. And I yeah, I'll stop from here. I think I'm talking too much.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that very relevant example. I feel like that would really help people to understand. Brandon, could you add on to this sentiment?
Sure. So we know that there are a number of biological and environmental factors that contribute to one's gender identity and sexual orientation, right? So there's lots of research out there that's been done on, like, in some instances, on 500,000 people across the globe. Things that suggest that between something like 8 to 29% of an individual's genetic code decides these things before the external factors get in the way. But these things they don't teach you at school, and things they don't teach you there or you don't find in a research paper, is that these elements of your identity also come from a deep sense of self-awareness, and it takes time to get there. So there are broad norms that we're working with, and these broad norms over time have become a precedent that then leads to herd mentality, and that sets in, and somewhere along that process is we find the death of autonomous thought, of self-reflection. So it's important to teach young people about the complexity of identity, yes, but I think it's important to do that in relation to the self, not just who I am in relation to you, but also who I am in relation to me, meaning the external factors that construct me in relation to the internal factors that define me. We need to teach our children to use the knowledge that they acquire to cultivate the self. Otherwise, as Bhumi said, a lot of these conversations just end up being about sex. And sexual identity is a lot more layered than that, It's about the translation of love across genders, the multiple ways in which attraction works, the exploration of intimacy, and of course, at the bottom of it all, the profound spirituality. So that's why we need to start teaching these things early.
That was such a beautiful explanation. Thank you so much, Brandon. So moving on to our next question. This is directed at Aritha. Aritha, what is the current status of queer rights in Sri Lanka, and what does the battlefront really look like? Is the end goal of marriage even in sight?
God, that's not an easy question to answer because there are so many facets to it. In brief, if I have to give in a one sentence, the status of queer rights in Sri Lanka is terrible. Is it getting better? Yes, it's getting better. I think it's important that as queer people, we also understand when we speak of rights, we're really looking at from a legal perspective, because rights are enforced because rights are there in law. So we need to know what the law is that govern queer people specifically, LGBT plus people. What rights do we have and what laws are against us? If I have to speak of the laws that are against us, the laws that are primarily used against us is Section 365 and 365A of the Penal Code. There is also, I think, Section 390, which is used against transgender persons on impersonation. 365 and 365A are very interesting pieces of laws because they actually criminalize sexual activities, certain sexual activities, which can be committed by both homosexual or heterosexual or bisexual persons. There is no gender specification on who can commit these sexual activities. What Section 365 prohibits, for example, is carnal intercourse against the order of nature between man, woman, and animal. So on a plain reading of it, it doesn't read that it criminalizes homosexuality because there is no express reference to homosexuality. But what we need to understand is what is carnal intercourse against the order of nature and how is it being used against the LGBT community. Now, we have some very interesting case law from Sri Lanka and from across the region which all share the same penal code because it was given to us by the British during the colonial period. And there's some very interesting, funny, and in a way outrageous case law, actually. So one specific sexual act which it criminalizes is anal sex, or what was originally called the offense of sodomy or the offense of buggery. So anal sex, which if committed by either between two men or between a man and a woman, is equally a criminal. Hello? Sorry, yeah. So anal sex, whether it's committed by a man, between two men or between a man and a woman, is a criminal offense. But the law has evolved quite a lot since then. There have been some really funny judgments. So there was one judgment which said that actually any form of sex without a reproductive purpose was a criminal offense. And there was another judgment which said, well, because any form of sex without a reproductive purpose is a criminal offense, oral sex is also a criminal offense. And then what happened with that judgment was actually there's the law which was primarily being used against homosexual people started also to be used against heterosexual people. There were lots of cases coming up where actually ex-wives and ex-girlfriends were filing complaints against their heterosexual male partners, saying, oh, my partner made me give him oral sex, and therefore it is carnal intercourse against the order of nature. And so straight men started getting prosecuted, and straight men started going to jail for having received oral sex from their partner. And actually, strangely, a lot of these cases were also consensual. But the law was looking at the person who was performing the oral sex as a victim, even though they had consented to that act. So then the courts were like, okay, this law which was designed to target gay people is also now targeting heterosexual people. So the courts didn't like that, and they said, okay, you know what? Oral sex is okay as long as it leads to natural vaginal sex after. So basically what the court said was, if you get a blowjob and you ejaculate, that's a criminal offense. But if you receive a blowjob, but then you move, but that's only part of foreplay, and you move to have vaginal sex after, that is okay. So, a really gross intervention into what two consenting adults are doing in their private rooms. Why is a judge so concerned about how two people are having sex? Then there was another judgment which said, thigh sex is also a criminal offense. This is when you are putting your penis between the thighs of an individual. And then there was a really funny judgment which said actually mutual masturbation is also a criminal offense, because when you make your hand into a circle and you masturbate someone, there is penetration, and this is intercourse. And because obviously you cannot reproduce by masturbating someone, that is carnal intercourse against the order of nature. So, this goes to what Bhumi was speaking about, and what Brandon even touched on, this focus on sex. Sexuality and sexual orientation and gender identity is not about sex. There's a lot more to a human being and to a human existence than to categorize us into our sexual behaviors and our sexual practices. I'm not gay only because I'm having sex with men, or what kind of sexual activities I'm having with men. I'm gay because, I am romantically, emotionally, and spiritually attracted to someone of my same gender. That is why I'm gay. So this is how the law is. And unfortunately, these laws are primarily enforced against LGBT people because they are an easier target. It is very easy for the police to say, well, two gay men, two gay women, they were having sex. They obviously can't reproduce together. Therefore, they have had unnatural sex. We've had some positive developments at the same time. In 2014, we had the Attorney General say that actually you cannot discriminate against LGBT people and that it is unconstitutional to discriminate against them. In 2016, which I think Bhumi will speak on further, is we had a gender recognition process introduced in Sri Lanka, where you can get a gender recognition certificate and you can change your birth certificate, your ID card, your passports to reflect your correct gender. Then in 2017 and 2019, also we had the Attorney General say, repeat that you can't discriminate. And in 2016, we had a judgment from the Supreme Court, which really questioned why there are laws like this still, and that it's time that Parliament throws them out. We also had in last year and early this year, we had the Justice Minister openly make a statement saying that the government was committed to end discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity. And we had the president actually tweet his commitment to ending discrimination against sexual orientation, gender identity this March. And he's probably the first head of state in, South Asia for sure, to have actually expressed support for non-discrimination against LGBT people. But that doesn't mean that these laws have changed and that the enforcement of these laws are still ongoing. I am working and assisting on several cases where LGBT gay men primarily are still being prosecuted for consensual sex in private. So that kind of prosecutions is still ongoing. So it's, we have some positive statements, but I think it's not enough to say positive things if you're actually doing the exact opposite in real life.
Yeah, the situation is a bit horrific, to be honest. Bhumi, I saw that you were reacting. I feel like you have a lot to say on this topic. Would you mind taking the floor? I'm sorry, please give her a minute.
No. when I was listening to Aritha, I was feeling to kill myself actually. How you can define someone's value as a human being based on their orientations or like the way they have sex. Oh gosh, it's horrible. Then they should execute the people who wrote the Kama Sutra book, and they should destroy the Khajuraho temple, which is like openly carved the statues of a different type of sexes, right? And yeah, when it's come to law, what I think is like it's really old, and it's based on it's created during the colonial period. And I'm not that much focusing on laws because there are like so many people who, especially Arita, and there are people who are much aware about it to give such explanations. But currently we are working on the trans protection bill in Sri Lanka. But when I was like drafting and working on these stuff, what I'm feeling is like, why you really want to have a specific protection bill? And then I'm answering to myself, yes, because it's necessary. At least if you have a legal protection, then you can fight for it. So the fight is kind of a funny sometimes, because we are fighting for humanity, right? To live peacefully, not to have a part of Sri Lanka, or like not for have anything, some stuffs that we don't belongs to have, right? Everybody loves to live with their family. Everybody loves to have a good education. Everybody loves to have a peaceful, I don't say peaceful jobs, but jobs are not peaceful. And I live a life how they feel that they are living, they're still alive, right? So unfortunately, the human values, as I mentioned earlier, and the talents, the capacities, the opportunities, all are based on out appearances, expressions, on or their gender identities or their sexual orientations. My question is always like, why you really want to know what is a person's sexual orientation, what is your gender identity? Because I'm applying for a job to work with, based on my capacity, not with my genital organs. I don't do any part of jobs other than my sex life, or like my basic needs to, in my life. Other than that, I don't use my genital areas or my sexual orientation or my relationships to work. I don't work with my genital areas. I don't work I don't drag my relationships into my job. It's like same as so-called normal people's life, right? The people have made my life different. That's all. So I think the laws and influencers and law policy makers really need to. I think it's kind of a time to think that what exactly as a country we need. What kind of things that we need to focus on. There are so many things that like law and law policy makers need to focus on their put their focuses on, like child abuse, like rape cases, these are the things that becoming high, rather than putting their focus on that particular issues. Putting restrictions on a person's life is kind of a funny thing and kind of a pathetic situation. I think you really need to focus on, you in the sense like the people, right? But in that case also, like let's say United States and the other countries who have decriminalized this situation, but they still have social problems. I think not only policies and laws need to be changed, but I think also um, attitudes. Yes, basically attitudes need to be changed, because currently we are working on making job opportunities and vocational trainings for trans community members. I most of the times I'm talking about transgender community because that's my working area, but that doesn't mean I don't work for entire LGBT community. When I get opportunities, yes, I do speak about everybody. So in that case is also what I think, that the massive, not only in a small scale, but massively this attitudinal change process need to be starts. Yes, it's funny. I'm sorry, I was laughing when Aditya was saying like uh, people can get arrested for different sex acts. Like, how pathetic a person can peek into my bedroom and judge me and monitor my sex life. Where's the right for uh, personal life, right? There's something called right to privacy. So what is this, like, how can a law or something give permission to sneak in or like peek into my bedroom, which I share my personal life with the person who I love or like I'm living with, and judge my life, putting all my hard work or like my human values, the contribution that I do towards to the community, putting it to the trash bin and judging me based on my really personal life. Yeah. Sounds horrible.
I just want to add on what Bhumi said, judging people on what they're doing in their bedrooms. There's a case which I'm advising on. It happened last year, in about June, July last year, and their case is still going on. There were 3 gay men. They were in a hotel room. They were fully clothed. They just happened to be three gay men. They were not participating in any sexual activity at all. They were just three friends. And someone either in the hotel reported that their behavior was suspicious. And so the police then raided their room, basically, literally broke down the door of the hotel room, found these three gay men in the room, fully clothed with each other, arrested them, found one of them had some condoms in their bag, accused all three of them of homosexuality, and they all admitted that they were gay, but they were in a room together having a conversation, having a chat, and having a drink. And the police then took them to the station, whipped two of them with wires. All three of them were then subjected to forced anal examinations. These are examinations that are done by the state to actually find if people have been participating in anal sex, and then use that as evidence to prosecute them in court. And the outrageous part of this is that you're actually trying to prosecute people for consensual relationships by forcing your fingers into their anus to see if they have had anal sex. You know, I mean, who has committed the crime here? The people who are consensually having a relationship, or the people who are forcing their fingers and utensils up someone's rectum? And that's not the end. Then these people were also subjected to forced sexual health screenings, HIV/AIDS testing. One of them was found to have been HIV positive. And then this status was disclosed in court. You know, that man is suicidal, because not only did he have a very traumatic experience, but, you know, doctor-patient confidentiality was breached here. A public courtroom was disclosed his HIV status. And this is a country which, aside from having a lot of stigma around homosexuality, also has a lot of stigma, a huge amount of stigma over being HIV positive. So, you know, and it's been over a year. This case is still going on. The police has zero evidence that they actually participated in any anal sex because these three people were fully clothed. The fact that the court has not thrown this case out is itself outrageous. And the fact that it was the court which ordered them to be subjected to these sexual health screenings, which is irrelevant. If you're prosecuting people for even consensual sex, their sexual health status is irrelevant to the case. So everyone, from the police to the justice system, is hand in glove in what I would call persecution of LGBT people. And persecution based on, just like what Bhumi said, what people are doing in the privacy of their bedroom. And in this case, you can't even have a conversation in your bedroom, in a hotel room.
You know what really sums up the pathetic situation, Aritha, is you having to repeatedly say they were fully clothed. I mean, that's that itself is just very pathetic. I think our next question actually follows up on everything that was covered on what we just spoke. I know it's a very, very difficult topic, but have you encountered discrimination in your life? That's such a question to ask. And what is the spectrum of discrimination in Sri Lanka? And what can young people, everyday people, do to alleviate this? Can I have Bhumi start off with this question? And I'm opening this question out to the entire panel. Bhumi, can you start off?
Why me? Why me?
Oh, sorry.
Discrimination and violence. It's something that I carry all the time, right? So every day when I let's say, not these days, since we all are inside our home, kind of a peaceful mind, but like every day when when I used to go to work, maybe after this pandemic, it's something that I have to make myself to ready to tolerate, not tolerate, but like for myself to, okay, I'm going to neglect, or like I'm not going to respond to people what they're saying, right? Or like what they're doing, or what kind of things that they are going to throw at me. So like we became how can I say, we became a country, a society, which we have always worrying about others, right? We have hell of a lot of time to gossip about others, like to think about why are they like that, what they're doing like this, and why they are like that, this and that. But there are plenty of things that they need to be doing to, towards their developments, right? We have hell of a lot of things. Sometimes we complain that 24 hours is not enough for our life, right, to get done our work. But we have enough time to gossip and peep about others things lives, right? If two gay guys living in a one, or like two guys, let's just forget about like homosexuals or transgenders or lesbians. If two girls or like two guys living in a one house and sharing their food, or no, like let's say like they're holding their hands and walking, people might have like hell of a lot questions in their minds. What they're doing, what's wrong with them, are there a couple, is these guys like having sex, like who? I mean, just think, when you introduce your partner as a gay person to someone, let's say outside of the community, or like sometimes these quite stupid questions coming from through the community as well, right? Okay, who's the boy and who's playing the boy's role, who's playing the girl's role? Dude, they're two guys. Like, why one person should have to play the girl's role? He's a guy, he's a man, or like he's identifying himself a guy, a boy, a man. Why? And two guys together, that means like two guys. You don't have to, I mean, please grow up. Nobody's going to come to heterosexual couple and questioning about what kind of a sex act you are doing, who's doing the passive part, who's doing the active part. Please, you need to grow up and give some sort of space. And if you are, I mean, the worst question that you can ask from homosexual person or transgender person, like what kind of sex that you are having. And I mean, the worst question I have been asked, have you done your full surgery? Right? I mean, a transgender person means to Sri Lankan society a person who's going through all these hormone therapies and surgeries, or becoming a socially accepted a man or a woman who have a vagina, constructed vagina or constructed penis. Please, that's not it mean to be, right? It's my identity. That doesn't mean I have to go through all surgery process. I mean, this situation is throwing a homosexual community and transgender community into a really bad situation. I'll give you one example which is like really critical at this point. So to get the social acceptance and being legally married couple, a lot of lesbian couples and gay couples are going through this transitioning process, which is really dangerous, because like we always instructing people, right? Before you go through this gender recognition process, you have to go through a psychiatric monitor. I mean, I don't know what is the exact word, but a psychotherapy period, because it's just not going through a surgery and get the vagina or penis done, right? It's a hell of a lot process, because like, yes, I might being identified myself mentally as a woman, but going through a physical change is totally different thing, because I used to live in a male body and I'm going to a totally different body structure, and I need to be mentally prepared to handle that situation. to be very honest, if I opened myself totally, when I got my breast implant done, I had a kind of a mentally depressed situation because I'm not used to a breast, right? And living with that, and how to handle it and maintaining it was a huge question in my life, because I have heard, but haven't done anything before like that, right? So I'm telling, like, becoming a woman is the most worst thing in this world. I'm telling you guys. That's the kind of a horrible thing. I'm not saying it's a horrible thing, but it's, you need to experience it, like, to feel it, how hard to become a woman in this society, right? Whether you have gone through all the surgeries and procedures, but still you'll be questioned, are you a real woman? I was thinking, what is the real woman's definition now? What is, okay, having a broad breast and hips, and having a smooth and soft skin, and the frames will comes to you. If I'm going back to the critical situation which I was explaining. So um, so one incident came to us to handle. It was like two lesbian couple, one couple, uh, two of them have this discussion, and one person have gone through almost a breast reduction surgery, and he was applying to change his, I would say her, because she actually entered to the process because she didn't feel as a man. She wanted to have her partner as his wife legally. So that's why she have gone through all these processes. So once she got reduct her breast implant, she was refused by her partner, because obviously her partner got attracted to a female, right? And now she's trying to become a male. It's really complicated just because of this social structure. So now she was like telling us how I can get my breast back, and I feel to kill myself. It's really hard situation, like, what I always say is, when it's come to this kind of let's say new trans community members to us, to ask about the procedure, the first question that I am asking, like, why are you changing yourself? Why you really want to go through this process, right? And and I'm always giving this option, okay, rethink about it, and what are you going to do? What will happen to your job? Do you think that you can find a job after your surgery and outer appearance will be changed? So these kind of questions that we ask, because, like, the focus shouldn't only be on your change. It's a huge thing. It's a huge process. Like, you have to think about your career, you have to think about your surroundings, and you have to have backup plans. So the discriminations, and like, I always tell this to my community members also, like, changing yourself, your body not going to change the social vision that have towards to you, social focus that have towards to you, right? Let's say that I'm getting married to a guy, right? The guy or that guy's family might not have problems about that I'm being a trans woman, but the society will always question not only me but my partner also. Okay, are you getting enough satisfaction from her, like, having sex with a biological woman? So what are you going to do for babies? Didn't you find any good girl to get married? So these are the questions. Like, I think, grow up. You need to focus on your personal growth first to judge. I don't judge people. I used to judge. I'm not saying that I'm a perfect mentality body person. I used to judge. I used to question myself, also my community members, long time ago. But I learned, because before I judge someone else, I should think about myself, like, whether I am capable enough, I'm qualified enough to question someone else, because my journey will be totally different. So I can't judge or like question people based on my journey. There will be so many journeys which are more worse than us, so inspiring more than us. So what I always tell, I think a lot of young generation related guys and girls are hearing us right now. Don't be a pretend to be open-minded person just to be fit into, you know, socially high class societies, or like to be in a high class or like, you know, cool groups and everything. Don't be pretend to be open-minded person sake of continuing, or like s- sake of being a part of that kind of social institutions, groups, or like friends. Change yourself honestly, because you can lie to someone else or society, but you can't lie to your own soul. We call her the sakshi, right, in Sinhala, right? You can't cheat in to your heart. So before you do something to someone else, think, if something happened same thing like to me, how I feel, how I'm going to react. It's same. So like the previous spoke about Jesus and love, right? So I mean, in Bible, I'm not a religious person much, but I always take good examples from every religion, right? Jesus have always said, do something to others, like, you know, like if someone doing good to me, I like it. So do something, do good things to others. And I always say this, Jesus said, love your neighbors. Jesus didn't say love your neighbors if, I mean, hate your neighbors if they are sex workers. Jesus didn't say don't love your neighbors if they are gay. Jesus said Jesus didn't say discriminate your neighbors if there are trans groups of in your lives in your neighbor. He spread love, and Lord Buddha spread peace and love. I believe all religious leaders spreaded the love, and they talked about like how you should treat others in a really good manner, right? So I think this man-made and society-made religions might discriminate, or like spread hate speech and hate throughout the country or throughout the society. But always listen to your heart if you're trying to do something bad. I'm sorry, I took long to explain.
No worries, Bhuvi. I just have to remind that we have just half an hour more. So as much as I love every single thing, I honestly wish we had unlimited time to talk about this topic, because it deserves unlimited time. But sadly, we have to be on track. So to talk about the discrimination that our speakers, our panelists have faced in their lives, and how we as young people can do to alleviate this situation. Arun, would you mind taking over?
Yeah, sure. I can't say what I could possibly say about it. I mean, um, if you're facing discrimination, I mean, I would just hope, you know, that that you could, you know, we talk a lot about it. It's sort of been talked to death about, but you know, as queer people, you know, the chosen family is such an important thing. It's so paramount to who you are, and and finding spaces within community where one can feel safe, or one can feel like one can be yourself without judgment, as Bumi said, and to seek those out, to find allies within the spaces that you're in, even if it's just one person, because you can't escape discrimination. It's a simple fact of unfortunate fact of life. But what you can do is build the support of network of support that can help alleviate it or help give care when it feels like it's detrimental. I will add one thing. This is to the previous question that was posed to Artha and Bhumi, which I won't add to what they said so eloquently, but within the question, this idea that the end goal of queer liberation is marriage or marriage equality is not the case. And I would really strongly admonish that actually to queer liberation, in fact, has no interest in the idea of marriage legality. It's something that, in fact, I mean, I live here in New York, and it was to the detriment of the queer movement here that they so focused on marriage equality rather than on the giving basic human dignity and protection, particularly to trans people, who are of minorities. Basic human rights and dignity are the end goals of a queer liberation movement. Marriage is something that's nice for some people and of no interest to others. But yeah, so.
Thank you so much, Arun. Brandon, would you like to add into this sentiment with your with your personal experience of discrimination?
Not so much from a personal space, but like on the subject of discrimination, I'll say this, like, on the surface, it seems very much about differences and the prejudices that are attached to those differences. But I think deep down, it's just a case of you are lesser than me, or I am greater than you. And when you look at it through that lens, it sort of helps us expand the view on discrimination a little more from, majorities versus minorities, to also helping us see that discrimination occurs not just between communities, but also within them. So nothing makes you lesser or greater than anyone else, like absolutely nothing. And I think that as individuals, if we can understand that first and foremost, the rest just falls into place.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Aritha, would you like to touch upon how us, the younger generation, what could we do to alleviate this kind of situation, to make sure that discrimination does not happen?
I think conversations like this are very important. Led by young people, Rotary, Rotaract, YMCA, if they're actually involved in this, to pursue having these conversations. It's very important to open up minds and create awareness. I think young people can also, should be empowered to call out when they see discrimination. Even the use of words, we use so many offensive words against the LGBT community in a casual reference, using the word faggot, pornea, or even the word gay in an insulting way, like, oh, that's so gay. So as young people, when we hear these words, you have to say, actually, those words are really hurtful, and they're wrong to use them. A lot of queer people have grown up having these words constantly used against us, to dehumanize us. And when we see other heterosexual people use these words in casual reference, it reminds us of the trauma which we've experienced. And it reminds us of the shame that a lot of us had to endure growing up, and still many of us carry that shame with us. So as young people, we can call, you can call that out when you hear that kind of homophobia or transphobia. You can share positive, accurate content on LGBT issues through your social media. You can engage in these topics in a positive way on your social media. You can counteract hate speech against LGBT community on your social media. So there's a lot that we can do, especially young people can do, to counter and to, at least sort of prevent discrimination from growing. Even if you can't stop it, you can prevent it from spreading.
I mean, I must say that I am proud of our generation. Our generation is very vocal. We stand up for other people, we speak out, but it's definitely progress, but we have a very, very long way to go. So moving on to our next question. This is to you, Bhumi. The trans community faces the worst forms of harassment and discrimination in Sri Lanka. Many times, even within the queer community itself. Would you like to share your thoughts on what it is like being a transsexual in Sri Lanka?
So it's, I mean, when I was starting my journey on human rights as a human rights activist, um, the situation, I mean, the situation I saw, I think it's still same. Yes, we have kind of a progress towards to a better change, but I think it's also there's a huge gap. And let me correct you in a one point, the generation wise thing, right? I think those discriminative attitudes and the acceptance, it's still there. And I have seen a lot of rude approaches and ways of throwing bad attitudes at people. It still exists in every generation. Sometimes we think it's easy to change the younger generation, but the hate and the rudeness and that bad vibes still like exists within each and every generations. So it's sometimes it's really hard to talk to younger generation. We think that it's really easy to approach them, but it's really hard. Yes, there's a huge change happening. uh, I think it's a good example that we are having this discussion today with road tracks. So it's a huge progress, but I think it's there are a hell of a lot that we need to work on and change, because like it's really hard to speak to people who think that they know already everything. I think it's the age problem. We also used to think that we know everything. We do right things in our young age. That doesn't mean I'm too old, but yeah. So I think the best way to learn things, you have to unlearn things to learn, right? So if I answer to your question, yes, it is, because again the judgments still coming up. Let's say like a lot of trans men community face that like forced to have sex with men to correct themselves. Like we have so many cases that their own family try to seduce them, own father, own brother, letting other guys to come and seduce and rape trans men because they were biologically female. They think it's like if you are a trans woman or a lesbian person, if you have sex with a biological man, that experience will change you to a socially accepted that proper woman to that proper woman category, which is like really really ridiculous. And the things that we face, I mean, let's say we think that our medical field also have the same kind of mentality. And the thing is, like, we always carry our personal attitudes to everywhere, into our career, into our social services, in general public. We carry that dirty attitudes everywhere. So let's say I'll throw you another example. A trans man who born as a woman and now trying to become a man, uh, to a man, right? He was going to a hospital and to the plastic surgery clinic to get a date
to do his breast reduction surgery. So this particular doctor and two female doctors, a male doctor and two female doctors, were harassing him verbally by saying you're bringing shame to your school. Why can't you be a woman and have a socially accepted life, and like having sex with a person who's having a big penis might change you. These kind of these are the not conversations that you should have with your patient, right? Having sex with a person who's having a big penis or a shorter penis, or having a sex with a person who's having a vagina, it's something up to me. I'm not, I don't go there to get judgmental things or like get your opinion about it, right? I'm just going there to get a service, a service which you should provide. You're liable to give. You are dedicated to give to your patients or your clients. So in that case, yes, we are still having that harassments. We are still, I'm not saying that we face harassments all the time. As I said, like laws and policies can change anytime, right? As I mentioned, like we are working on the trans protection bill in Sri Lanka, which will be helpful for transgenders in Sri Lanka to have a better education, better government services, to approach to better jobs, and to live with their loved ones. But I'm still having this thought like, okay, we will be able to pass that bill, fingers crossed, with the blessings. But how I'm still thinking how we are going to change people's attitude, because like we have so much kind of a bad proud attitude that we are correct, we think, and what we do as a majority in our country is the best thing. But no, sometimes you guys are doing the worst things to people's lives, right? If I'm in a kind of a bad person, became a bad person of talking about these things. I'm sorry, I'm taking so much time. Yeah, sorry.
It's fine,
This
Bhumi.
is me. This is me. You're giving me
Go
a
on.
mic. I will sing all the night.
But then again, I must also say that as much as, yes, the whole progress is extremely slow when it comes to acceptance, when it comes to not discrimination. But on the positive side, it's a step in the right direction. It's very slow. We really need to quicken the pace, but it's a step in the right direction. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So our next question actually was covered by Aritha and everyone during our discussion previously. It is basically about the harassment and discrimination that is faced at the hands of legal bodies and law enforcement. But Aritha, can we just maybe talk a bit more about how we can eliminate these forms of harassment in like a legal perspective?
Yeah, I can give it in a short way. If you are being harassed, if you've been arrested by the police because of your sexual orientation or gender identity, you can file a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, and you can go straight to the Supreme Court to say that your fundamental rights have been violated. But you have to do this within 30 days. I think that restriction itself is absurd. Usually for 30 days, people are processing their trauma, let alone having the time to find a lawyer and prepare a case and go to court. But that is our views or limits in our constitution. But please, there are statements from the Attorney General which have said that discrimination is unconstitutional. There's a lot of good body of case law from India, from the United States, from South Africa, from the United Kingdom, all countries which our courts look towards for persuasive judgments which support LGBT rights and equality. If you have been arrested, if you are being harassed, it is unconstitutional. You can, and you should, please consider going to the courts or at least to the Human Rights Commission as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Aritha. So moving on to our next question, popular media, cinema, and theater, the arts, if you may have, they've led a march to equality around the world. We see the same thing happening in India with queer themes being adopted by mainstream cinema. Now, this question is to Brandon. What is your opinion on the effectiveness of this? And where do you see Sri Lanka on this map?
Okay, so I think queer cinema dates all the way back to like 1919. I think the first queer themed film was a German one called Different from the Others, Anders als die Anderen, I think it was called. And I believe it was the intention of the director, Richard Oswald, who also happened to co-write the script, to attack paragraph 175 in the German criminal code, right? Because at the time, that's what made sexual acts between men punishable by law in Germany. Then when you look at what India is doing right now, moving away from even queer stuff, we go into the category of the daily serial, and they've shifted their focus from like vengeful divas in too much makeup to conversations that are really helping shift the socio-cultural dynamic, right? There are shows like Anupama that are discussing what happens to families after divorce. The intricacies of parent-child relationships, mental health, and what triggers a person, and how extremely human it is to be able to love and hate someone with the same kind of intensity. And even here at home, Asoka Handagama's Tanithatwe Piyamana, when it came out, was considered one of the most revolutionary films in South Asia at the London Film Festival, I think in 2002. And it sparked so much dialogue here at home about gender identity when it came out. I say these things to point out that the function of entertainment in communication is extremely powerful, especially when it's used to highlight the need for development and social justice. There are many conversations that you're not willing to have with your parents, your children, your friends, that you end up having with a fictional character, or you watch them having these conversations with themselves. And this is in literature, in film, in television. Sugako Hashida, who was the creator of Oshin, she just passed away last Sunday, and Taiwan media reported it as breaking news, because Oshin changed so many lives for a lot of people around the world, including people here in Sri Lanka. There is a reason that North Korea has announced the death penalty for citizens caught watching foreign films and TV shows. There's an understanding of how powerful messaging can be when it's packaged in the function of entertainment. Sometimes it's a play like Arun's The One Who Loves You So, that makes people see that what we're feeling essentially transcends gender and sexual orientation. So yes, do I think it's effective? Yes. Where is Sri Lanka on the trajectory of this map? Lagging a lot. When people like Arun and Bhumi are brave enough to start momentum, I think the rest of us just need to really switch on to carry that momentum forward and not let it fall, because it can come up and then just dissipate, and then come up and dissipate, and nothing happens. So when momentum is given, I think it's up to us as artists also to just take it and run.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for the speech. Now, actually, this is a follow-up question for Arun. You are the first openly queer person writing about queerness to win a Gratian Prize. Does this represent a shift in the acceptance and celebration of queer people on a national scale?
One, I don't believe I am the first. This because I do believe there have been other winners who did identify as queer and also, or do rather, and were writing about it. This Visakesa Chandrasekaran won, I think, in 1999. Do I think there's something changing? Was that the question? Sorry. Yeah, no, I don't, unfortunately. There's, I can only speak from personal experience, but when I was making shows like Parea and a play called The Corn, which Brandon was in both of those, and speaking very explicitly about what the government was doing in terms of our complicity in, as Colombo natives to the government carried out the government's acts of violence against minorities. Those plays I received funding for. The One Who Loves You So, which is the most traditional piece of theatre I've ever made and is quite far away from my general sensibility in terms of theatre. It's a very traditional story. It's presented in a theatre, is the only piece of work that I received not one piece of funding from any institution in the country. And that is including the British Council, the German Cultural Institute, all of these. And it is unfortunate also that, the only real arts funding is coming from European bodies anyway. But on top of that, it was incredibly difficult to put that play up. And to be perfectly honest, I really worry. I hope that more people, it's for young artists who do want to talk about queerness, I think you should, because it does move the needle, and more you kind of have to flood people with work about it, and work that represents a myriad of different influences and different kind of experiences rather. But it just has to happen, and it's hard to be there and making it. I mean, there's a reason why I don't live there anymore. There's a point where you kind of go, you're screaming into the wind, and there is very little that moves the needle, or seems to, particularly as the country went right back politically, and it sort of shows a value system that does not see the value in people who are not the majority, who do not represent, both in their sexuality, in their race, in their gender, in their views on gender. They are so completely opposite to what you believe in. They don't see you as a human being, and it's incredibly hard. But I would hope that more. But it needs to happen. It's a necessity, and as Brandon said, it is the thing that that does move a needle. And as Bhumi said before, it is about changing hearts and minds. That's the thing that wins things. That's the thing that changes a conversation. But yeah, I'm not particularly this positive about where it is right now, unfortunately.
Arun, your Magnus Corpus, The One Who Loves You So, is lauded mostly for its insistence to not propagate on the lines of stereotypes. Now, what is the role stereotypes play in social perception, and how does it affect the battle for civil liberties and equal rights?
I mean, certainly it does, and I'm trying to think. I mean, to me, I don't know. Stereotyping is I don't know if it's necessarily the key of it, to be perfectly honest. Because yes, stereotypes are dangerous and harmful, but it's more it's a symptom of the problem rather than a cause of it, I think. But again, I think if I was speaking to to queer people, and if that was the question of how do you avoid it, I'd say to ignore it. I think there's real great power in who cares if you are. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, in terms of other people and how they stereotype queerness, I mean, what can you do? I mean, it's the same thing. It's you try to change it, you try your best, and you also try to ignore it. I mean, that's why I really do believe in queer people finding spaces for themselves. Because there are just certain things that other people just aren't going to get. Even in the most liberal of spaces, in the most progressive of spaces, queer people need to have spaces for themselves. It's imperative. To me, I don't believe in the idea of, I mean, I think I spoke about this when I won the question as well, but I don't believe in the idea that we're all the same. I think we are different. I think that's exactly why we deserve human rights and dignity. It's not, that similarity is not a reason to care for someone or to have empathy for a person. It shouldn't be a prerequisite. I don't know if I answered the question at all, but.
Yes, you did. Brandon, the next question is to you. Movies like Funny Boy have taken homosexuality in Sri Lanka to an international stage, basically. Now, how has this contributed to the overall dialogue and the fight?
I think this is very much connected to what I was saying before. You know, Funny Boy is another example of how the function of entertainment suddenly shifts the ability to communicate about a subject that is considered taboo, into a certain level of ease. So many people reach out to me on a daily basis to have conversations about the film. I'm so sorry I can't engage with everyone, but it's so lovely to see this shift, in the understanding, in the willingness to listen. And it's very endearing to hear some of these stories, because I'm seeing firsthand how something as simple as a film is helping someone come out to their friends or family, or to have a difficult conversation with a child. And that's powerful. The film has enabled a lot of conversation, and just, of course, sparked a lot of debate as well, sometimes in the negative. One person wrote to me publicly on Facebook and told me that if I want to be queer, he said, if you want to be queer, you should find another country to do it in, because you don't have the right. Basically, was telling me that I don't have the right to be who I am in Sri Lanka. And said this like very publicly on Facebook. My mom kind of told me that it was up, and I had to deal with it thereafter. But that comment made me really happy, because it was the only one of its kind. And I know that that would not have been the case 20 years ago, or 10 years ago even. To know that that was the only comment of its kind that came out to me on like a public forum, it really does give me hope for like the generation that comes after us. And it gives me great pleasure to be a part of the generation that is us, and reaffirms the fact that we need to keep doing what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brandon. So moving on to the next question. I'll be fielding this out to the entire panelists, all the panelists. Bhumi, would you like to go? I would like Bhumi to go first. So how can organizations like our own join the fight for equality?
So you want to know the organization's role, right?
Yeah.
What I feel is, end of the day, we work. I mean, we have different agendas, and we have different platforms, and we have different ways of doing stuff. Sorry, I look like a really old woman now. But I think, end of the day, we need to find a platform which everybody can come together and work for it. So I think organizational wise, what I see is working together is the most challenging thing. I know, like Arita will agree with me for this. We are so Sri Lankan in some ways, right?
So Bhumi, the question is, how can organizations like Rotaract or the YMC
okay, not us, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll come.
How they
I'm
can
sorry.
support it.
Yeah, how can we as young organizations contribute to the fight?
Sorry, I'm so distracted. This is kind of a result of staying home for a long time. So yeah,
slowly losing it.
Yes, I have totally lost it. So yeah. So I mean, yes, in our side we have to start to find a strategy to working together. And if I'm talking about like young organizations, I feel like you have to open doors for everybody. It's like this. So I think I have done a session for Rotaract before as well. In that also, when somebody started talking to me, I said like, yes, it's really nice to see like people starting to talk about this, but how many members that you have from the community, and what kind of a work that you have done to make more inclusive your work, and have you been any part of, you know, any campaigns or like any work that make sure that inclusivity and equality guaranteed, like you don't have to be like specifically LGBTIQ work, but uh, as far as you are opening up your paths for each and every uh, uh, diverse communities, right? If you can make your movement a collaborative movement, I think that will leads to a good path. Let's say like there might be plenty of homophobic and transphobic members in your clubs, right? In youth groups, but how are you going to break that homophobic or transphobic mentality if you don't make any interactive platforms, if you're not putting them in to work together to know what kind of a people are these people? These are not aliens, these are not people who are from the other countries trying to implement these things. These are Sri Lankans. So like you have to make that kind of inclusive platforms, like to get to know each other, to show some support to each other, to understand what the human values and lives are. So I mean, to realize and understand that difference, as Arun said, we all are different. So to understand that difference, you have to put everybody together to work on a task. So yeah, I'm sorry for messing up with the
It's completely understandable. Thank you so much. Arita, would you like to add your sentiments to this question?
Sure. The powerful thing about Rotaract and Rotary is your network. You have a lot of passionate people, you have a lot of powerful people, you have a lot of influential people in your network. And your focus, the purpose of Rotaract and Rotary is to do good, to create a better Sri Lanka, a better world. So what I would request from you is to put together, reach out to the other Rotaract organizations, the other Rotary clubs, prepare a petition. I can help you draft that, calling for the repeal or amendment of sections 365 and 365A, the end to the harassment and discrimination against the transgender and the LGBT and the entire LGBT community, to reform laws to support a transgender protection bill, list out things which our leaders need to do in order to stop this persecution of the LGBT community. And I feel like that kind of petition submitted to our political leaders by the Rotaract clubs and the Rotary clubs will have a huge impact in getting our leaders to listen to the daily trauma and struggle of the LGBT community, the criminalization and the persecution that we are subject to. I think that will really show your support to ending this nearly 150 years of persecution, and to help us move forward as a country that respects dignity and equality of the LGBT community. So here's an idea, and I can help you draft it.
Definitely, maybe that's something we should discuss further, Arita. And Brandon, would you like to add in your sentiments to this question too?
I think these guys have, given you a broad list of things to do. But I would say, continue doing what you're doing. And I think there's great importance in having conversations like the one we're having right now. I hope you're having them outside the Western province as well. I hope language is being factored in. I hope Sinhalese and Tamil are languages that these conversations are happening in as well, that the length and breadth of understanding and comprehension is happening across the board. and not just to like, you know, a limited number of people. So yeah, carry on doing what you're doing, and good luck.
So much, Brandon. Arun, would you like to speak on this too?
Sure. I mean, I absolutely agree with everything that was said before. I mean, if there is one other thing that I'll pull on a thread that Bhumi laid out, which is to you know, examine your. I mean, absolutely, to make public statement is imperative. I think to use whatever weight the organization has to move change is imperative. But I would also say I really agree with Bhumi about, you know, clean up your own house in terms of how do you ensure that the organization itself is not just inclusive, but that inclusivity is part of its mandate. How many Rotaract or organizations or this Rotary organizations have members of the queer community or and particularly minorities who are queer in positions of power, in positions where they can speak on it. Because if there is a move to make the organization more inclusive, then these things will be far more apparent. What needs to be done will become more and more apparent. I think we, in all kind of fights for justice and the social movements, we have to push the outside and we have to push ourselves. We have to examine how we go through the world and what are we doing. Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much,
just want
Arun.
to add to this Arun's statement on, you know, organizational inclusivity. I think it's so important, and I think this session is a very good example of that, because as we discussed when it was actually before we went live, this is supposed to be something between the YMCA and the Rotary Club. And it's a series of events between discussions between the YMCA and the Rotary Club. But the YMCA has pulled out of this session, but the Rotary Club decided to still go ahead on its own on this session. And that really shows your organizational commitment for the Rotary Club for LGBT inclusion. And it really shows the hypocrisy of the YMCA, because the YMCA's charter globally requires it to be inclusive towards the LGBT community. The YMCA has actually put in a rainbow filter to celebrate Pride Month. But yet YMCA Sri Lanka did not, the YMCA Sri Lanka decided not to support this session in complete contradiction to their international charter and their mandate, in complete violation of Christian values of love and acceptance, and in complete conflict to their own policy on non-discrimination.
Arita, I think it's a completely different reason why they did not participate. But on the positive side of things, our club is definitely ready to take up the petition. We don't know what the feedback will be overall, but we are pledging to take it up. So we'll be in touch with you and let's make this happen. Actually, moving on, I am really sad to say that because of time restrictions, we can't take questions that are posed by the audience. We have a couple, but I'm really sorry. We have to wrap up today's session. But before we do, I'd like to have the closing remarks from all of our panelists. And my question for these closing remarks would be, what message can you leave to the young people still discovering themselves? Arita, would you like to go first?
My message would be to, I think the first step we must all take in our journey is to learn to accept ourselves and to learn to love ourselves. I think that's a very critical part. And once we actually fully accept ourselves for everything that we are, including our flaws and our imperfections, and we love that about ourselves, it can really give us the courage and the strength to face everything else.
Thank you so much, Arita. Bhuvi, would you like to add on? Would you like to give your personal sentiments?
What I would like to say is, you know, we can't expect to, like everybody to accept us and, everybody to love us. But I think its most important thing is like you need to understand who you are and how much valuable you are, and you have to start love yourself. Without loving yourself, you can't accept someone else to accept you and love you, right? So first, self-love and self-acceptance is most important thing. And the other thing is like the dignity. I really love to request, it's not only about LGBT people but all youngsters. Don't let anyone else to define you. You have your own values. You are so valuable, you are so special, you are so important as a human being. So um, develop your qualities, develop your humanities within you, and try to be a great human being despite of your gender identity, gender expressions, or sexual orientations, or whatever. Those are the labels which society gives us, which is not defining me or someone else, right? So stop seeing yourself or others with your like bad lens. So like wear spectacles which filled with love and good vibes. So be a good human being, not to get the social acceptance, but have to self satisfaction. That's the most important thing. So don't harm anyone. Spread love. Stay chill and cheerful.
Thank you so much, Bhuvi. Arun, would you like to add in your sentiments?
Yeah. One, I would say that in exploring your identity, to sort of remember also that none of these things are fixed. That one doesn't need to, even though there is often a pressure to sort of to make definitive kind of choices about who you are or who you love. I don't, but you need to know that you can, that those things are, they move on a spectrum, and you can feel one way on one day and the next year you might feel differently, and that doesn't make it any less valid. This and beyond that, I just so urge people to embrace themselves. I mean, it can seem difficult, and there is, of course, difficulty, but it's so great to be queer. There's something so wonderful about queer love and queer friendship, and the spaces of joy where queerness is centered. There's nothing quite like it. So all you do is miss out on that. It's in fact, it's maybe one of the great regrets in my life is that coming out so late, because there is so much experience that I could have had, and I so envy people who do come out when they're younger, because you just get to start on a really rather miraculous journey when you most need it. Yeah.
It's just sad that the minute people don't understand something, understand how a certain thing works, the default reaction is hatred. So my only hope that we as a generation will be able to change how people experience things. So fingers crossed. Dame Brandon, would you like to add in your closing remarks too?
Thank you for having us. Firstly, this has been very insightful. But to young people who are listening, I would say be gentle with yourself. The process of self-realization, awareness, these things take time, especially in a country like ours. I think I knew very early in life who I was and what I liked and didn't, but to say those words out loud, for them to spill out of my mouth, for me to embrace that truth completely, it took until after I was 30 years old. there are moments still in life when I hold back. So it's a process. Be kind to yourself and to others as you go through it, as you move through it. And also participate, actively participate, but participate because it means something to you and not because it's fashionable to do so. You know, when you have a voice, use it, but use it not because it's the trending topic, but because it really, really means something to you. When you're in an organization, find out what your rights are as an employee. When you function as a citizen of this country, find out what your rights are as a citizen, in every aspect of your identity. But yeah, above it all, just be gentle with yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I must say I'm very honored to have moderated this amazing session. Thank you all of you for joining in. And with that, we conclude today's session. But first and foremost, I would especially like to thank all of our panelists, Arita, Arun, Brandon, and Bhumi, for taking the time off your busy schedules to be here with us today and educate our audience and share your valuable insight. Thank you so much. And on a personal note, I would like to congratulate the committee behind Better Why for organizing such an amazing and such a timely panel discussion. Not forgetting our amazing audience that joined in today. Thank you so much for being part of this session. I hope you learned as much as I did. Thank you for being here. And lastly, I would like to leave you with this thought: don't ever be afraid of showing the world your true colors. And with that, it's a wrap of today's session. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.